Hi, I'm Jim Berggren, pastor at Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas, and this is Pentecost, the 17th Sunday of Pentecost. 4 raunchy bikers rolled up to the truck stop diner. Lots of obnoxious noise. They were a rolling COVID test. If you can smell them, it's good news. You're not infected. They sauntered over to a trucker who just got his meal. They demanded his booth. He refused. They dumped water over his head and threatened to put him in a hospital. He left. They were laughing about it and yelling at the waitress. He wasn't much of a man now, was he? She said, no, he wasn't. He was a bad driver, too. He just ran over 4 motorcycles on the way to the interstate. If we can't win the contest, at least we'll get even. The contest concerning who is the greatest is typical of carbon-based organic life. Rudimentary hierarchy has been a feature of life for hundreds of millions of years. Male birds seldom quarrel over females. The main battle is over real estate. I watched a squirrel last week, vocalizing vociferously from high up in a tree. Looking around, I couldn't find a female squirrel anywhere. Then I noticed a cat on the ground, on the other side of the courtyard. The squirrel was serving notice to a cat twice its size. This is my territory. This is my tree. I'm the boss. The cat, like most cats, was whatever. I wouldn't even consider climbing that tree unless there was 100 pounds of dog chasing me. Squirrel was in a contest for greatness in a certain space. The cat was not interested, too tired to bother, too full from eating those Basking Robbins. Even national boundaries marked the place where 2 gangs lost interest in the contest, where they were too exhausted to continue, so they called for a cessation of hostilities and made ink marks on paper and maps to celebrate the occasion. Dogs go through this process a lot more efficiently. It is not just in military adventures, but in every discipline. The history of science, of philosophy, of religion is a roadmap of contests for greatness. All of them define reality in different ways. All of them enjoy internecine contests for greatness. The big trick is to get them to appreciate, cooperate with the other viewpoints. A contest for greatness always has casualties. A cooperation builds community and life. The contest is, though, entertaining and distracting. Watching politics these days is more fun than watching the NFL. This last year, a great African-American leader completed his life's mission. I was sad to see his brilliance fade. Great man, deep thinker, Dr. Walter Williams was a professor of philosophy and economics both at Temple University and George Mason. One of his quotes is, "Politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it everywhere, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedies." He stepped outside the competitive loop and sought cooperation with humor. Jesus stepped outside of that competitive loop with a different measuring system. He tried to bring his disciples out of the contest for greatness into the cooperative passion for service. In effect, he flipped the pecking order. The disciples are discussing who will gain in social status in the new kingdom that Jesus is going to usher in. Even in the in-group, internal squabbles over honor status. I had just come back to Houston from 4 years in the mountains. I went to the weekly pastor's pericope study. Introductions were made all around. One pastor gave his name and said, "I'm the oldest here, so I'm the senior pastor." Up until then, I was not considering that distinction. But the devil wanted me to engage in the contest and record, "Well, I'm Bergie, and I've ministered to satanic bikers and an Episcopalian ex-president of the United States of America. That range makes me better that I kept my big mouth shut. Different measuring system, but same old urge to win. For what? Comedian Stephen Wright was being heckled by a drunk on the front row. "Hey man, you're not funny. Your socks don't even match." Wright squinted through the glare of the stage lights, and he kindly said, "That's okay, dude. I go by thickness." Jesus asked the question, "What were you discussing on the way?" In their attempt to elevate their honor status, their silence, their inability to answer a simple question Jesus poses, nullifies their status. They're standing now at zero when Jesus brings a child into their midst. Jesus intended to illustrate what it means to be servant of all, to step outside the contest for greatness by taking and receiving even a little child. To call someone a child back then was an insult. Children were considered another mouth to feed that couldn't work near as hard as a slave, the lowest status person in the household. What Jesus had to say applies to the lesser ones of all varieties. Someone might disgust you, or seem ignorant or mean-hearted. They might seem weak and far from great. And the gospel says, serve them. Bracket your feelings. Give the lesser ones your best. And I've often wondered what the instinctual urge is that compels us to see others as less than us. Is it only because we want to be greater? The King of the Hill, it's a strenuous game contest in which the protagonist is always defeated, sooner or later. It would be much more fun if the object was to see how many people you can fit on the top of the hill for a party. Make it a contest, okay? A contest of cooperation. Kind of like phone booth stuffing, but with a lot better ventilation and refreshments. Stevie Wonder was a celebrity entertainment for a celebrity party. A lot of greatness there, competing for whatever. Tiger Woods came up to him at the piano to compliment him on his work. Stevie told him, I can play golf pretty good too. Tiger was like, "Really? You're not kidding? I mean, how do you do that?" Stevie explained, "Well, I have two caddies. One stays with me, and the other one goes out to the green and stands at the pin. He barks at me because that kind of sound echoes better. I can hear which way to drive, where the open fairway is, and the roughs and hazards all have their particular sound. The time it takes for the sound to bounce back gives me the distance." Tiger said, "Wow, that's amazing. I'd like to see that." "Oops, I didn't mean to say it that way." Stevie said, "No problem. Let's play 18 holes. Make it interesting. We'll play for $100,000. Tiger said, "Oh, no, I couldn't do that. That'd be a terrible advantage." Stevie insisted. He said, $100,000 and I'll handicap you 10 strokes. Tiger finally relented and said, "Well, if you insist. So when do you want to play?" Stevie laughed and said, "I'll play on any night you choose." Jesus didn't berate the disciples for trying to be great. He urged them on to better and more fulfilling greatness through cooperation and the lifting up of little ones. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up." And later Paul adds in Romans 14:19, "Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding." Cooperation is the law of the universe. Cooperation is the law of God. Cooperation is the one great truth that sets us free to strengthen a world of weakness. Virtue signaling and competitive wokeness are contests that even the strongest will lose. There's always a faster gunslinger out there. In God's eyes, we're already important. In daily life, the little ones who are outside and who are weak are the most important. Make it a contest to be the greatest at cooperation and servanthood. Amen.